Hello, my name's Seal Barber and I'm author of the Chronicle of Killian series, the first book, Keeper of the Keystone, and I'm on chapter 6 called The Visit. Brightly coloured birds chirp noisily in the tree under which he stands. Michael has never seen so many unusual species and he stares at them wondrously. Turning his gaze towards the landscape before him, none of it is familiar. In fact, he hasn't a clue where he is. Whilst scrutinising a round, hairy creature carrying its dinner up the misshapen tree, he feels a gentle tap on his shoulder. Unnerved, he swerves around quickly to discover what touched him. Nothing. Nobody. Shielding his eyes from the sun's glare, he cranes his neck left and then right, but still finds nothing. To his right, a hazy mist is settling on top of a mountain range, and at the bottom, hundreds of tall trees stand like loyal subjects thronging round their king. Michael notices that the tree under which he is standing is inhabited by many creatures and birds, and yet he can't imagine anything making their home in the skeletal trees in the distance. Their emptiness fills him with foreboding, causing the hairs on the back of his neck to prickle. The only sign of life is the shimmering stream flanking the skeletal trees that flow round the perimeter of the forest. Down the hill to his left, he spies a small village with small clusters of houses scattered further in the distance. The closest houses are crooked and unsymmetrical, with smoking chimneys protruding from the brick walls instead of the roof. Most of the cottages are only 1 story high, and their gardens, like the houses, are tiny. Further in the distance, there's another hill. On it, a stone wall encases a huge expanse of land. In the centre stands a majestic castle which towers over its surroundings. It is exquisite and completely unlike his small flat back in Grays. Another tap on his shoulder startles him. He pivots round, turning so fast he catches his foot in a small pothole and stumbles backwards. Regaining his balance, he faces a man who looks the best part of 100 years old. Michael stares disbelievingly at the wrinkled old figure that has just disappeared, and reappeared without so much as being seen or heard. "Wondering who I am and how I got here, aren't you?" His voice is soft and reassuring, with no sign of his age in his speech. Scrutinising the strange man, his bright red shirt, the black and white striped waistcoat, mustard tie, and finally his matching brown cardigan and trousers, they all caught his attention. Despite being filled with anxiety, Michael can't help but feel an irrepressible desire to laugh at this bizarre and colourable ensemble of clothing. "Is something wrong?" No, nothing. I was just wondering," Michael stammers as he twists the ring on his finger nervously. Glancing around, his eyes search for anything which might explain his companion's sudden appearance, but he finds nothing. "Well, how did you get here? Why didn't I see you a moment ago? Who are you?" Realising the old man is struggling to keep up, Michael halts his barrage of questions. "It's so good to finally meet you. I'm Abednego, though most people call me Abe, and I live in the castle over there." Sensing Michael's unease, Abednego places his arm comfortingly around his shoulder. "Don't look so scared, everything's fine. You might feel confused now, but it would all become much clearer soon." Dumbfounded at the man's knowledge of his name, Michael's lost for words. Instead, he stands up, opening and closing his mouth like a demented goldfish. "Please don't be alarmed. I'll explain later. Relax. No one else has a clue about your existence, so you've no need to worry." Still speechless, Michael continues to stare as Abe carries on. "Just in case you're wondering, the ring was from me. Now listen carefully. You must promise me that you will protect it with your life, for it will guide and help you. Hide it and tell no one here of its existence, for its value is more than you'll be able to understand. Well, for the moment at least." Before Michael could respond, Abednego continued, "And beware, here in Killian, people aren't always what they seem. Just make sure you think carefully before talking to anybody. Many would sell their own mothers to get their hands on that ring. Make sure you let no one influence you. Go with your instincts, and only then will you be able to fulfill your destiny." Abednego's face slowly turns red as the excitement of finally finding Matthew's son overwhelms him. Well, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by my destiny. And who shouldn't I trust? Why am I here? I'm your great uncle, he chirps, ignoring Michael's questions. Oh, I'm so pleased I found you, though it's taken some time. Never been to a place with so many houses. Never mind, now that I've found you, I know everything will be just fine. Michael stares at Abednego, realising he's still no closer to discovering why he's there. However, before he's able to repeat his questions, a clap of thunder makes him jump. Suddenly, in the space of seconds, the bright sky becomes dull and overcast as a blanket of greyness descends. Rain cascades in torrents and the birds stop their happy chirping. Some freeze like statues, their bright colours fade into stone grey. Others take flight, heading away in the direction of the forest. Within seconds, his clothes are drenched and clinging to his skinny frame. Pushing his hair from his face, he's astonished to discover the old man's disappeared, leaving Michael desperate to find out more about him in this strange place. Michael, wake up! Stirring, Michael awoke to his mother's concerned face. Get up or you'll be late for school. But I was in the middle of an important dream. Oh, well, at least it was until it started to rain. Well, unless it's the winning lottery numbers, I suggest you turn your attention to getting up and getting dressed. I've been trying to wake you for ages. Sorry. You were talking in your sleep again. It's that overactive imagination of yours. Opening the curtains, inviting in the rays of sunlight, his mum headed towards the door. Do hurry, Hazel will be here soon. Oh, your breakfast is on the table. Far too early in the morning to be that bright and awake, Michael thought to himself. Scrunching his eyes tight, he tried recalling the dream, but as always, although he could remember what he saw and what the old man had looked like, he had no memory of what was discussed other than his claim that he was a member of the family. Suddenly a thought occurred to him. What if the man in the dream and the man in the shop were the same person? Uncertain about the significance of his dream, he pushed it aside, for he had no intention of Hazel finding him in his pyjamas. Within minutes he was munching his breakfast, waiting impatiently for Hazel to show up so he could tell her about his dream. Regular as clockwork, she knocked just as Michael shoved the remnants of his peanut butter sandwich into his mouth. See you later, he shouted, grabbing his old satchel. Have a nice day at school, Pumpkin. Oh, cringing, Michael slammed the door shut before she embarrassed him further by demanding a kiss. Before they had finished descending the stairs of his flat, he was recounting his dream, telling Hazel everything he could remember. Hazel remained quiet for some time after he'd finished. Initially, Michael was tempted to disturb her, but decided to wait a while, because Hazel wasn't really known for pondering things too long. Usually, Dan was the thinker of the group. However, after a couple of minutes, his impatience got the better of him. So, what do you think? Was he trying to tell me something important, or was it my imagination running away with me again? I can't believe it, Hazel whispered disbelievingly. You described him exactly how he was in the shop, and I don't remember either of us mentioning what he was wearing. It can't just be a dream. There's got to be more to it. Michael knew she was right. Strolling, deep in thought, they made their way along the main road towards the school gates. Still in silence, glancing at Michael's hand, Hazel noticed he was still wearing the ring. I'd take that off if I was you, unless you want it confiscated. Unwilling to risk the only thing he owned, which was actually worth anything, being taken from him, Michael tried removing it, only to realise that it was stuck fast. Taking a deep breath, not that this would actually help in any way, he tried again, this time pulling even harder. It was no use, the ring wouldn't budge. After struggling for what seemed like several minutes, but was probably no more than seconds, the only thing Michael had achieved was the reddening and swelling of his finger. Next, he tried wetting it, hoping the moisture would remove the stubborn ring, but again it was no use. The ring was stuck like a limpet to a rock, and it wasn't letting go. At this point, Hazel, who had until now been watching with amusement, offered her services, although the thought crossed her mind that even if he was caught wearing it, they probably wouldn't be able to get the ring off of him either. Nevertheless, she clasped both hands round his already sore finger and yanked in one direction, while he pulled his throbbing finger in the other. Several failed attempts later, Michael winced with pain as he gazed at his red finger. People passing by stopped and stared as they resumed the tug-of-war, each pulling as hard as possible. Eventually, after much heaving and sighing, Hazel's foot slipped. With both of them pulling in the opposite directions, something had to give, and unfortunately, it wasn't the ring. Hazel stumbled backwards, tripping and falling, with Michael following closely behind. Onlookers howled with laughter as both landed heavily, sprawled on the dusty pavement. The exhausted pair gathered their belongings together, aware of the laughter pealing through the street. Michael's vision became a blurry mixture of pointed fingers and callous faces as malicious shouts deafened him. "Oi, Mike! See you in the dirt where you belong? Never mind, pumpkin. I'm sure your mum will clean you up. After all, doing that for a living, she should be used to it." Alvin Aldwinkle, the tallest, fattest and most uncouth boy in their year, who just happened to be in most of Michael's classes, hurled abuse across the street. Of all the people who could have seen him fall, it was just typical that one of them was Alvin. Now he would never live it down. Shoving his equipment back into his ripped satchel, he could feel his breathing quicken and the blood rush to his cheeks. Falling was embarrassing enough, without the insults which were now being called out. Students who had continued their journey now stopped and returned their attention to him, fueled with this new ammunition. A barrage of insults ensued, name-calling, laughing, jeering and staring, simply because of Alvin's revelation that his mother was a cleaner. His face turned an even deeper shade of red, and his head was now throbbing so violently he thought it would explode. Praying for the ground to open up and swallow him, he bowed his head in a bid to block out the faces penetrating his vision. Placing her arm around him comfortingly, Hazel smiled awkwardly, knowing how he must be feeling. Yet Michael was oblivious to her attempts, instead dwelling on his anger which was stirring inside of him like molten lava in an erupting volcano. He knew it was only a matter of time before he exploded. He hated the way that they attacked his mum, insinuating she wasn't as good as them just because she was a cleaner. Michael hoped that someday, when he was watching, Alvin would fall over, and perhaps then he would know what it was like. He sighed. Everybody knows things like that never happen to people like Alvin. Almost as soon as he thought it, his fingers started tingling. He was horrified to discover that once more the ruby in the centre of the ring was glowing. Only this time he noticed the black spot appear in the centre of the ruby which he hadn't seen before. It looked like an eye, and more worryingly, it seemed as though it was staring straight at him, which of course was ridiculous. Desperate to hide it, he clenched his fist and shoved his hand in his pocket, praying no one would notice. He was lucky no one did, for at that moment Alvin detracted all the tension away from him. Hearing the renewed guffaws of laughter, Michael looked up and took in the sight of Alvin lying sprawled on the ground, clutching his right ankle. Astonished, Hazel watched gleefully. There, collapsed on the ground, a stony-faced Alvin glowered at those who dared to laugh at his misfortune. Michael stared in disbelief as Alvin struggled to his feet, clutching at his cronies who helped hoist his lumbering body off the pavement. "Get me up," he rasped, scowling at his three cronies. Michael could imagine him making a mental list of all of the offenders. "May take his mind off of bullying us for a bit," he whispered as they surged towards school, determined to keep out of Alvin's way. "Strange, wasn't it?" remarked Hazel. Michael didn't know what to say. Should he tell her that what he thought moments before Alvin's fall? Should he tell her that his ring had glowed, that it had made his whole hand tingle? Unable to contain his excitement, he knew he couldn't keep it to himself. So the rest of the journey was spent discussing the last couple of days and wondering what was going to happen next. Thank you very much for listening.